ladies and gentlemen. We're back to chat with Mandy. What is going on in the world right now and how we come to this peculiar situation. For those of you who couldn't see previous conversation that we had due to restriction on my account, Mandy, if you can please introduce yourself.
Me. Hello. My name's Mandy Rose. I'm a friend of Radek's. We met in London when I was protesting, and we got along. We've been on the same page ever since. We did a little chat a couple of months ago, or a month ago. I can't remember when it was, but obviously that didn't get out to a very large audience, did it? We didn't get to very many people. So hopefully this evening we'll get to more people. And just going to chat about the continuing insanity which is taking over the world.
Great. I'm just sharing this to my secondary profile. I'm gonna place link in a post. So top of this post, if you can please follow my new profile, because whatever happened on this profile, I will get instant ban for 30 days. So therefore, if you can please follow up new profile so we can stay in touch.
I need that on. So I have to be careful about what I say tonight, don't I?
Yeah, so if we can use words treatment instead of the word, so we will use word treatment. And
yeah.
instead of we will just refer to famous disease instead of referring to C disease. Yeah.
What was that? We're going to call it famous disease.
Famous disease instead of using word C, and then instead of using word V, we'll use word treatment.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just updating posts so people can follow second profile.
You're lucky I'm still awake. I'm so tired, I tell you. The last couple of days have been crazy.
I'm old type, and I've got other things to do in the daytime. I'm squeezing this when I can, which is nighttime.
Yeah. So what do you want to start with then?
What you want to start with?
Well, do you know, a couple of things have come up. I've had conversations with people recently, you know, people that that I like and respect and regard as intelligent people. And it's just baffling to me that they're still completely under this spell, you know, of this existential health threat. That they still take it so seriously. They still believe everything that they're reading in the mainstream media, despite the evidence, which is now patently clear, and that is every single country that is rolling out this treatment is now worse for it. It's getting worse. And when you compare these countries with countries that aren't rolling out the treatment, they're actually in a better condition than we are. Like, for example, South Africa or Vietnam and places like that, where the treatment is, I think it's only around about 10%, yet they have far fewer cases. In fact, everywhere around the world, there was a study, I did make a note of this, it was done by the European Association for Epidemiology, I think, or something like that, along those lines. Forgive me for not remembering the full title correctly. Association for Epidemiology or something like that. European, it's a proper bona fide peer-reviewed study in which They assessed 168 countries around the world. Now, there's only 194 countries in the world. So they went to 168 of them, and they found that none of the restrictions or the treatments made a blind bit of difference. Didn't affect the spread of the threat in any way whatsoever. So, it's, I mean, you've only got to compare places like Sweden, for example, and Japan, or some of the states in America, like Florida, for example, places like that, which didn't impose restrictions. They approach things much more sort of level-headedly, with a lot more common sense, in ways, in fact, that echoed the advice given by the Barrington Declaration. And they fared just as well as the rest of us, who went for the more draconian options of locking people down, destroying education, destroying the NHS, destroying people's lives effectively. And there's no real difference. There's no real difference at all. In fact, as I say, the only discernible difference is that the countries with the highest uptake of this treatment have got the highest number of cases. So, and still, despite this, which is kind of, this information's not secret. It's not occult information. If you do your research, as I'm sure most people have who are talking to us right now, they know what I'm saying is true. It doesn't hold water. It is just absurd. The whole thing is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. One thing, though, you can take away from it is they introduced this thing a year ago, when there really was nothing going on. There was literally nothing going on. There was a lot of hype. There was all this fear mongering, this deliberate psychological warfare that was used to induce this state of paralyzing fear amongst the population. But there wasn't really that many people dying. There clearly wasn't a existential health threat. People weren't falling down in the streets. That much we all know. We've all seen that. We've all lived with that. But now, I think with the treatment, they are in fact creating what they said that they're meant to be combating with the treatment. They are creating a problem. And that is just another example of the fact that these people at the top, who feel that their position is under threat from us, who they've kept under their boot heel for as long as go back as old, since time began. They feel that they're threatened, their position is threatened, therefore they will do anything to maintain their position at the top, to keep us at the bottom, and they use the same tactic time and time again, and that is create some kind of catastrophe. They create some kind of catastrophe, and then they have to supply a response to that catastrophe. The catastrophe could be an existential health threat, which is what they're using now, or it could be a global conflict, as we've seen in the past. These things have happened throughout history, and they show, they're continuing to happen. The alarming thing is that educated people, people that, like I say, people who I respect, who I think ought to know better, are falling for it, and they're obeying. That's the worst thing. They are, ignoring their own conscience, and just enabling this thing to roll out and to go ahead. And it is absolutely the worst. It will result in the worst possible consequences for humanity. Of that, I'm in no doubt whatsoever. The
On
worst
that,
possible consequences.
I've just seen on friend's profile. Uh, I just seen on friend's profile posts about Noam Chomsky. You perhaps
Oh yeah,
know the guy,
yeah.
saying that he insists on dividing the society between treated and untreated. And there was a question asked by journalists on which he Question was, how do we get food to them? On which he answered, that's their problem.
This was Noam
So
Chomsky.
yeah, so if you're saying that educated people, and especially a person like, let's say, Noam Chomsky, I saw this just before we tuned in on Debbie Hicks' profile. If that's what a person like Noam Chomsky is saying, then we're pretty much doomed.
Well, he's a psychopath. You know, he's a notorious leftist. Now, I don't like to think of this in partisan terms because I don't really think that serves the purpose of our conversation very well. Nevertheless, there is a partisan element to this, you know, and it's mostly those on the left. It tends, especially in America, but then it's America where a lot of this nonsense originates. You know, these lunatics like Biden, which is why obviously Trump had to go, because Trump wasn't quite so he wasn't so amenable to the globalist agenda, but Biden just falls right in with it. Well, the man's a puppet, isn't he? He's not there. He doesn't know where he is. That you can literally almost see people behind him pulling the strings like he's some sort of yeah, like I say, like little puppet. So in that respect, there is this kind of partisan element to it. The Democrats are 100% get the jab. Can I say that? Get the shot, whatever it is. And if you don't, you'll have all your freedoms taken away from you. But the most insane thing about this, and this is why this is astounding, coming from somebody of Noam Chomsky's, you know, reputed intellect, is an argument like that when we know Boris Johnson has even been on TV just this week and acknowledged the fact that this treatment doesn't prevent infection, it doesn't prevent transmission. All it does is, if you are particularly vulnerable, supposedly, this is what they're telling us, this is the official line, all it does is lessen the chance, the likelihood that you might end up in hospital with some serious life-threatening illness. That's all it does. So, okay, so if we take that at face value, that means that if you take the treatment, if you are vulnerable, if you feel vulnerable and you feel like it's something that you need, so you take it, good for you, then you're protected. The fact that I haven't taken it shouldn't make a blind bit of difference. No difference whatsoever, because it's not preventing transmission, it's not preventing infection. The only person who runs the risk of getting seriously ill is me. And so then the question comes, this is what I saw a clip of somebody on Jeremy Vine saying, some woman, saying that, well, we have to protect the NHS. So, I mean, what is this about? Is this, on one hand, it's all about protecting our health. We're protecting you. This is for your safety. On the other hand, it's about protecting an
So how
institution which they are
sorry for
systematically dismantling and destroying.
how is sucking over 100,000 vision,
Exactly.
or perspective of sucking over 100,000 trained medical staff, which actually was there throughout the whole alleged pandemic on this so-called front line, and we were asked to clap for them on Thursdays. We celebrated them for a year. And how is sucking of our heroes, does it come in line with this?
Well, I don't know. This is the theatre of the absurd, isn't it? This is what it is. You know, we're all about preserving the NHS, but we're going to sack everybody if they don't do as we tell them. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But that's the world that we are living in now. This is why people call it clown world. None of it makes any sense. It's completely illogical, bereft of reason. It's utterly senseless. People have lost their minds, or at least they, if you think about it logically, they seem to have lost their minds, but that's simply because the narrative doesn't make any fucking sense. None of it makes any sense. You know, there's so many things that are going on simultaneously. The LGBT thing that's going on, the racial divide, which is being deliberately created in the name, you know, in the name of equality and everything like that, and this kind of the oppressed people and everything like that, and leveling up and all of this sort of stuff. None of it makes any sense when you actually look at it. It's all about something else, and really all it's about is dividing people, or everything's about dividing people. So that, you know, when they come on and present this kind of united front, say we're doing this for your protection, it's for your health, it's for making the world a better place, it's for equality, it's for inclusivity and stuff, it's for none of those things. It's literally for none of those things, because if you probe around, you know, just a little, you know, you start to expose the cracks in the narrative, and none of it works. None of it works. You can't overturn a majority democracy and hand it over to a group of minorities who have nothing in common with one another. If you then replace majority culture with minority culture, you effectively just destroy your culture. The COVID thing clearly, as I say, isn't holding up. It's not an exit threat. Millions of people aren't dying. People are going into hospital for all sorts of reasons, and they're being subjected to these PCR tests. Now, we all know, I don't need to go on about this, everybody in the chat room knows that the PCR test is completely bloody useless. It's been admitted by the WHO. It's been admitted by numerous public health bodies that it is not effective, especially if it's done over a certain cycle threshold. And that's essentially what the entire pandemic is based on. So then people go into hospital with a broken leg or with emphysema or COPD or whatever else it is. They're in there for a couple of weeks. They're near the end of their life, the majority of these people. And every week that they're in there, every few days, they're subjected to a PCR test. When they finally present, you know, the PCR test, which is what they're after all along, these people, that's the holy grail. They've got a positive PCR. That goes down as another COVID stat and another COVID patient in hospital, completely ignoring the reality of the fact that actually not very many of these people are in there with COVID at all. They're in there for all sorts of reasons, but they're ramping up these figures to perpetuate this idea of fear, like they're now a pandemic, I should say, you know, the idea of a pandemic, which of course then results in everybody being terrified that they're going to die. At least lots of people are terrified. You and I aren't, and these good people aren't, but particularly impressionable people are. And what disturbs me is how many people appear to be completely impressionable and unable to think for themselves. It's alarming. That's one of the most alarming things that's come out of this for me, is the fact that, you know, so much of these things don't make sense. Like when you get gay people on the streets campaigning for refugees from some of the most violent places on earth, places where they throw you off buildings if you're gay. But they're campaigning, bring those people into our country. You know, LGBT welcomes refugees. I don't want to, you know, I mean, real refugees, of course, we're all sympathetic to anybody who's being persecuted in their homeland and fleeing for reasons, you know, of threats of death or anything like that. You've got to have a heart of stone if you don't feel for those people. But economic migrants that are just flooding the country, that come here with completely diametrically opposite cultural values, who don't even have a word for democracy in their culture. And then to see some of these minorities out on the streets campaigning for them to come into the country, it's just absurd. It's just like, what are you doing? Why would you be doing that? You're crazy. You know, it doesn't make any sense. So much of this doesn't make any sense. You know, this kind of idea that black people have been oppressed forever by white people. So the only answer to that then is not to, well, I mean, it's not happening now anyway in our society. It's not happening now. We're talking about things that happened hundreds of years ago. But the answer seems to be, well, we must then make everything as diverse as possible, which is ridiculous. And it is pissing people off. But again, it's done with this kind of like really kind of noble sentiment. We're doing this because we're trying to make it a better world for everybody. But actually, as we've seen with the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff like that, it's actually just fueling division. And a lot of the people that are fronting these organizations are criminals. I've gone a little bit off the subject, but I'm just trying to highlight how absurd so many things have become when you look a little bit deeper. Like today, with the people out on the street, Insulate Britain. There's been an expose of one of those guys, hasn't there, today? Lives in almost £1 million house and has a couple of really flashy sports cars in his driveway and stuff like that. Yet when he's out on the street, he's dressed down, kind of grungified, and he's laying with his hands glued to the road, or at least if he wasn't, some of them were. It's like, you know, oh, we're just people who were terrified of the threat. They are shills. They are shills for the government. That's what they are. And it's all about, you know, the thing with the black minorities is to make white people feel bad, and that's a lot of this. Of course, it all ties up, you know, because the vaccine, I shouldn't have said that word, the treatment is being pushed mostly in white European countries and America and Australia and New Zealand. That's where it's being rolled out the most. And you could go down a very dark road with this. You ask the question, well, what is this about then? Because it's clearly making people ill. It clearly is. And the numbers are gradually sort of totaling up. They will exceed the numbers that we're being told have died from COVID. Eventually, they will do that. And the adverse reactions, I think, are well over 1 million now. Thousands and thousands of deaths, which of course, allegedly, I'll have to say allegedly, I don't want to get you taken down or anything like that, but there's been thousands of deaths throughout Europe and in the States. Everything is actually really the opposite of what it claims to be, and this is why people are calling it clown world. It's just all nuts. Everything's nuts and alarming, and I don't know if that's intentional, because obviously then it results in people must be confused by it, and yet they don't. They just, I mean, climate change, there's no evidence for climate change. There actually isn't any evidence for it. If things are warming up, they're only warming up slightly. And in actual fact, that's not going to do any harm to the planet. A little bit of warmth means more trees and more flowers and just a greener planet, essentially, which is what everybody's always on about, aren't they? We want a greener planet. Stop cutting down the trees in the Amazon. This is what a lot of campaigners go on about. So a little bit more warmth. He's not going to do anything really. There's no evidence at the moment at all, and I've checked this rigorously. There's no evidence that there's rising tides at the moment. There's danger of anything being submerged at the moment. All we have is constantly, every time something happens anywhere, like a fire in Australia or California or something like that, is all the media descends upon it, and we have media saturation of that thing. It's everywhere, exactly the same as I say, everything. These three things in particular, climate change, COVID, and critical race theory, the three C's. They are the three things that at the moment are destroying our society, and that's intentional, because they are trying to break down anything that even remotely resembles social cohesion or national solidarity. That's what it's all about, because it's all in pursuit of the what some people call a globo homo agenda. And I'm not talking about homosexuals, I'm talking about a global homogenous agenda, where they basically make everybody the same, and you know, and they're all controlled, they're all divided. So society is completely atomized, different from one another. Everybody feels like they're, you know, that they're fighting for themselves. They don't align themselves with anybody anymore. They're separated from their culture. If you're white, you disown your roots, and you willingly disengage from your history and everything else like that, because you're ashamed of it. This is how they break us down. This is what they do. This is 1984. This is literally what is in I don't know if you've ever read it. I read it years ago, and I've seen both films, but it's literally in the pages of that book, to separate people from their roots and to live in a state of perpetual war. And that's what we're in. We're in a state of perpetual war. Since 2001, with the attacks on the Twin Towers. We've been in a state of perpetual war, supposed with terrorists who could be anywhere. An invisible army, this invisible threat, because it could be the person next to you, it could be somebody down the road. You never know who they are, but they could come out of anywhere at any time. And for that reason, everybody must be, hi, Ivan, everybody must be under constant surveillance because they're a potential threat. So there's one thing. COVID, it's an aerosol. It's in the air. It could get you at any moment. An invisible threat. This is what we're doing. This perpetual kind of war with things that you can't even see, you can't battle, and because you can't see them and you can't put up any discernible, like, actual defense against these, you just live in fear. And that's what we've been doing. Is seems like one of your streams is having connection issues. Oh, I hope that's not
No,
anything serious.
I can't see any information here.
Thanks, Natasha. But yeah, as I say, it's just perpetual, and it doesn't stop. It's an assault on people, and it's coming from people who have actually admitted that that's what they're doing. Sage admitted, I can't remember how long ago now, but their documents were released that they were using fear to manipulate the public and to modify their behaviour. That was their stated aim. We must terrify the public. They're not taking things seriously, and we need to modify their behaviour. And the way to do that is to terrify them. Now, that's disgusting. And then you look at some of the other people that are the major actors in this whole thing that's been playing out over the last year or so. Look at Fauci. Some of the stuff that's come out about Fauci. I mean, I think Fauci's being made a scapegoat right now. I think he is going to go, as the Americans say, they are going to throw him under the bus. I think that is going to happen. Nevertheless, you've got to look at some of these people and what they get up to. So Fauci's the man who financed this gain of function thing in the first place, which is the most fucking fucked up thing I can even think of. Let's go into some caves in China, get some bats, mess around with, and make it so that they can then be mixed, create some sort of bioweapon, which will then be a threat to the entire planet. So what we'll do is we'll in there first. We'll create this great threat to humanity just so we can create a cure for it. And then if some other warped fucking individual does have the same idea as us, we'll be ready with a cure, with something to protect us from it. That's their reasoning. That was their rationale for doing this. In case someone else was to develop a bioweapon like this first, then they'd be prepared. What world is this man living in? That is crazy. That would never occur to me in a billion years. Let's do that. It's like me going and buying a gun and shooting my next door neighbour, because just in case, as a preemptive kind of defense like strategy, in case they got a gun and perhaps killed somebody down the road. So I've done it to stop someone else being shot. Do you know what I mean? It's that ridiculous. I know that's a crazy analogy, but it's that ridiculous. Then it comes out in this last week that not only does he do this, he's also been behind this terrible thing with the dogs. I mean, I'm sure some of these people have seen this with the beagles, where they had these dogs down in. Have you seen this, Rad? Where they had the beagles down with their heads inside some sort of container. They cut the dog's vocal cords so they couldn't moan. Then they placed their heads inside a container where they had sandflies, hungry sandflies. These containers were filled with sandflies. So the sandflies would then eat the dog's heads alive. And the dogs couldn't moan about it. They couldn't even yelp or make a noise. Now, I did psychology years ago when I was at college. And it's a well-established fact that a lot of serial killers begin their kind of journey towards that behavior by torturing animals. Now, what is that if it's not animal cruelty. That is unnecessary, unbridled cruelty. And it's just, and that's from Anthony Fauci. That's what that man is all about. That man is he's a disgusting, a deplorable excuse for a human being. And as some people say, you know, the old saying goes, there's a special place in hell for people like that. That's just disgusting. It's absolutely deplorable. It's disgraceful. And
My worry, looking at
this is
this,
what these people do. Sorry?
can you use headphones because I can hear echo when I speak?
Oh, really? You'll have to excuse. No, I don't know where they are. I think they might be in the living room. Is that all right if I
Mhm.
go and get them? Will you
Yes,
excuse me,
yes.
people, for a few seconds
I hear
while I
terrible
go and get the
echo.
headphones?
Sorry for a little interruption. In meantime, while we're waiting for Mandy to get her headphones, if you can please follow my new profile. I posted link in top of that post because I got so many. Actually, I don't know why. I don't know why I heard some echo. I don't have any other tabs open, so maybe I
Je
alarm Mandy.
reviens. Oh, j'arrive.
Wait a second, because I just had I had a background noise. Let's continue for now. I don't know what happened.
Without the headphones? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Right. So, well,
It
there's some
seems
other
that
stuff.
it
There's
was on
some.
my end.
Right. I did make a note of some things I wanted to mention tonight. There was a video I watched actually, which was fabulous. If I could find it, it was on. Well, it doesn't really matter. It was on the tactics of Pfizer, um, and the way, you know, the lengths they've gone to ensure that people buy their drug and continue to use it. And it's again absolutely appalling. It's like they've kind of held governments to ransom. It's like some of these governments might, I think it was a WION, a news company called WION. I'm not sure where they're from. They're not British or American. But they'd got hold of this paperwork. I had seen some of this paperwork before, but honestly, it was absolutely shocking. It was like literally Pfizer are imposing these conditions on the various different countries that are taking up the treatment, that are buying the treatment from them, and literally they are holding them and saying, right, if you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't pay us, we will take your assets. So countries are literally being forced to almost surrender their sovereignty to Pfizer. Now that is, there's a video. I don't know if I can. I'll have to quickly consult my history.
Shukil, he just posted. Shukil just posted in comments. It's an Indian news service.
Oh, okay, lovely. Thank you, Shaquille. Yeah, absolutely startling. It was. I couldn't believe it. Seen a couple of videos like that this week that I couldn't believe, including one of Jacinda Ardern gleefully telling people that New Zealand is gonna become a two-tier society. I used to live in New Zealand, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was like the most beautiful country. You know, I loved it. I grew up there, and you know, my heart, part of it is still there. It's some really good times when I was young and my dad was still alive and stuff like that. Um, Now it is a dictatorship. That Jacinda Ardern is a power crazed psycho bitch, you know. But the trouble is, there seems to be too many of these people. They're all over the world. But that's no accident either, is it? You know, they've all been put there. They've all been planted, you know, and because they all go along with everything. And it's no surprise either. This is, again, this it is, well, it is surprising how often the partisan element does crop up. Like certain members of Sage, I think Susan Michie or Mikey or something like that is a communist, I believe, who's a member of Sage. Jacinda Ardern was a socialist stroke communist, part of the Socialist Party. She's all about the state, you know, the power of the state and control over people. And
With her, sorry to stop you. With her, I was quite surprised because during massacre in Christchurch, when there was attack in mosque.
Going up very, very quickly. Well, sorry about that. Yeah. And since we're discussing... Stop. I've just found the video. Carry on.
Yeah. When there was terrorist attack in Christchurch in mosque, and the shooter killed around 50 people. Mm-hmm. She behaved what I was actually surprised to see, what I would call, I would say that she behaved like proper leader. She was very humble. I've never seen behavior like this from politician, and I thought, like, is it something changing in the world of politics that we finally got normal person fulfilling public duties? That was my impression of her. But later on, when I heard her being no, it wasn't an interview. She just said that people who are arriving to New Zealand without tests will be withheld in quarantine camps. That's how she called this, and for 2 weeks. And if they will refuse tests, they will be held there indefinitely. And she laughed. Yes. So that was the video that shocked me. And then watching her again saying things like she's okay, she with her wicked smile, that she's okay. That's what it means. Yes, that's what it means. We'll put Jews to the concentration camp. Okay. Yeah. It's like crazy. It's unreal.
I know. Psycho, the complete psychopath. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
zero empathy, while contrary, wrong word, opposite to how she behaved after terrorist attack. I saw her as a person full of empathy, and her behavior was, I would say, super correct.
I didn't see that as empathy, actually. Contrary to how you saw it, I saw it as playing along with the agenda of promoting the idea of white supremacy. Clearly, the guy who did that shooting was unhinged. You know, effectively, in my book, anybody who kills or willingly hurts another human being has got something wrong with them. I can't even begin to imagine how you would do something like that, because I'm sane and a rational person. Clearly that guy was out of his mind. But she played right into the whole idea of, white supremacy being this terrible, terrible threat. And it's not. And we've seen, actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because we've seen the same thing in this last week, haven't we? We had David Ames killed by a Muslim. I forget where it's from, Somalia, I believe. It was an example of Islamic terrorism. Now, I'm not going to condemn Islam. I'm not going to condemn Muslims or anything like that. There's nothing to be achieved from that. But the point is, as I said earlier, we know that an awful lot of these people, there's an estimate, conservative estimate, I would say, and this, again, something that I've read a lot about. I've read a few books on this subject, actually. Conservative estimates are that about 25 to 30% of these people hate the West. They hate us. They hate the way we live. They think that our women are, immodest and disgusting, that they live against the laws of God and things like that. They hate homosexuals. They regard women as second-class citizens. As I said, culturally, they are complete. They couldn't be more different. And they really don't like the West. So that's about 30%. Now, when you consider that Islam is actually, I think, the second largest religion on the planet, it's like more than a billion, it's like 2 billion people. That 30% then translates into very large numbers, hundreds of thousands of people who hate the West. So inviting them all to live here, as is happening, all over Europe, is a crazy thing to do, and it's part of an agenda. It's deliberate. They knew that if they, and it's not, as I say, it's not about people fleeing persecution and coming here as legitimate asylum seekers. It's about opening our borders and letting in masses of people all at once, that a huge amount of people very, very quickly, with no thought to how these people are going to be integrated into society. And that was a deliberate action. They knew when I say they, I'm talking about our government leaders. They knew that would result in conflict. They knew that if you took two lots of people and put them together in what they, laughably like to refer to as a melting pot, two people with completely contradictory viewpoints about life, one who value and adhere to the ideals of democracy, and another who don't, as I said earlier, don't even have a word for it in their language, who are completely opposed to anything like that. Obviously, that's going to breed conflict. Anybody could tell you that it's going to result in some sort of conflict. And unfortunately, we have seen that that's exactly what's happened throughout the terrorist attacks that we've seen all over Europe. I don't need to go through them all right now, but they have been, some of them been, well, they're all been horrific. The girls in Manchester, the beheadings in France. And then, of course, just last week, we had David Ames. The fact that this man was an Islamist and a terrorist has hardly been mentioned in the media at all. In fact, all they've gone on about is how the politicians need to, affect greater protection for themselves. If, however, it had been a white person, as was the case with Joe Cox, I'm sure some of the people watching now will be familiar with this, it would have been everywhere. It would have been white supremacy. Yet again, a white supremacist, a right-wing neo-Nazi white supremacist has killed David Ames. And you wouldn't have heard the end of it. But they were surprisingly silent on this guy's background and his roots. It took them half a day to even reveal where he was from. Now, I had a friend who was in Leigh-on-Sea at the time that this happened, and he called me up and he said, "Oh my God, you're never going to believe what's happened." I was like, "No, what's happened?" He said, "I'm in Leigh-on-Sea." He said, "I think David Ames has just been stabbed." He said, "There's helicopters everywhere. This is what I'm hearing." It wasn't in the media yet because I checked him. I couldn't see anything. Anyway, he said somebody had apparently just run in and stabbed him. And my first thought, call me a cynic, but my first thought was, I bet you it was a terrorist attack. It had the same MO, somebody just running in and stabbing crazily with a bloody great knife. And I just thought, I bet that's what it was. It took them half a day to reveal that. Whispers were circulating that it might be a terrorist. It was connected to terrorism and Islam. But it took them half a day to finally reveal the facts about that. And because, as I said earlier, there is, and it's not a nice thing to talk about because it is racial, and I don't like to I don't want to be the person responsible for creating, and I don't want to enter into anything that is divisive. I'm not a divisive person. I am all about everybody living together and getting along really well. But at the same time, you have to be realistic. And this is about creating destroying the white race. That's what they're about. There's this whole idea about, sorry, I had to just say it then. It's kind of, that's what it is. It's this attack on white people, on our history, on our culture, on everything else, because we're bad. we are terrible people who were slave owners, and we colonized different parts of the world, and we're responsible for all the evils in the world, completely disregarding the fact that actually, we improved the living standards of the majority of people on the planet. And even in some of these countries from which we did take slaves, I absolutely hold my hands up to that. And it is awful. It's the most horrible kind of chapter in our history. I mean, to me, it's unconscionable to even think that you could subject another human being to something like that. Nevertheless, the longevity, the lifespan of people in Africa over the last 100 years or so, as a direct result of the Industrial Revolution, which began in this country, which was then spread out across the globe, has resulted in these people living twice as long and having a better quality of life, at least up until reasonably like recent times, where we have now what we have unfolding, which is global slavery, effectively, which is the irony, because at the same time that they're sort of like these, our leaders are all about empowering minorities and giving them restitution for all the terrible things that they've suffered. They're getting those people on side, and those people are then, because they're so caught up in it, and they're so caught up in this fervor, this hatred of the white man, and they want to get their power, and they want to get their rights, and they want their equality and everything else. They are in actual fact playing straight into the hands of the globalists who want to enslave them. So they're actually enabling their own enslavement again, even worse than it ever was before, because when they use these arguments like colonization with the white colonial male, went out and colonized all these different countries and stuff like that, the battle now is for the colonization of your body, and that is where we are heading. And everybody who's on board with the treatment and all of these other things, that buying into this build back better narrative and the leveling up narrative, are actually just playing right into it. They are helping to build their own cage. They are becoming complicit in their own entrapment, in their own confinement. Captivity is the word I was looking for. They are complicit in their own captivity. That is where they're going to end up, because they've listened to all this nonsense, this drivel. They've bought it 100%, because that most minorities will do that. Of course they will. Any minority that suddenly thinks it's being given a chance, a shot at the big time, oh wow, we're going to have everything that we've always wanted, and we're going to take over, they've fallen for it. They've gone for it, and that's not going to happen at all. They are going to be enslaved. That is what this is all about. That's where we're heading with this. The whole thing is about control and enslavement, as I know and and the build back better thing. This is funny. I recently learned that actually that came into being in 2006. I don't know if you knew that, and it was part of the Clinton Foundation's manifesto following the disaster in Haiti. Remember they had a tsunami around about 2006, something like that. Was that when it was? They had a massive disaster. I think it was a tsunami. It could have been some other kind of catastrophe. But supposedly the Build Back Better thing was part of a recovery sort of program for these people that had been hit by disasters. And it was launched by the Clinton Foundation in conjunction with the United Nations. And it was set to really come into being, and you're going to love this, it was set to really come into being between 2015 and 2030, the UN 2030 agenda. And it's just been repackaged. That's all it is. It's just been repurposed. It's now Build Back Better as a response to COVID, which, as I say, it's like that example with Clinton. It's almost like a microcosm of what's going on now. One disaster, a catastrophe, requires a response. The response is build back better. We're going to make life better for these people, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you may remember all the money that was raised for the victims of the disaster in Haiti went missing. It actually ended up in the coffers of the Clintons. The man who exposed that, a doctor, somebody, mysteriously died a few weeks later after exposing what had gone on. And here we are now in 2021, and we're about to build back better. And it's just the same thing. They've tried this before, they're now trying it again. It's exactly the same as the treatment. If you go back to 2001, you had the anthrax attacks. They tried to push the idea that there was going to be a terrible anthrax epidemic and everybody would need to be vaccinated. They did, in fact, start vaccinating people in the States, I think in the MOD, or whatever they call that, the DARPA or whatever it is, the military, anyway, the American military. And they tried to link it to Saddam Hussein, I believe it was. They tried to link the whole thing to him, which would have then been an excuse for war. I believe it was Saddam Hussein. I could be wrong on that. I'm pretty sure it was, though. But of course, that all failed, and it got exposed. And then when the 2001 attacks happened, the plane crashed into the Pentagon and destroyed all the evidence of the anthrax thing. So then you had one attempt at medical dictatorship. Then they was going to impose this compulsory mandatory vaccination on people. It failed. Then we got to 2009 and you had swine flu, and they went for it again. They had bought and manufactured millions and millions of these vials, these little bottles with the solution in that they were going to inject into people. Swine flu dematerialized and just sort of evaporated. It was not anything like the threat that they said it was going to be. They had to destroy all of those treatments, much to their chagrin, because they lost, I don't know, billions probably in the process. And then we get to 2015 and you just get this magically trumped up pandemic, which is this, like I say, existential threat to mankind, with no evidence for it. Exactly the same as climate change. No evidence for it. And again, really quite like the whole thing with the diversity quotas and then the LGBT thing. There's no evidence really for any of it. It's all made up. It's all manufactured. But it's resulted in total confusion to people. The LGBT thing, particularly the trans thing, has gone insane now, because you can get in trouble for just stating biological facts. Obviously, if you go against the climate thing, then people accuse you of being a climate denier. They use this word denier now for everything. Again, similar to it's like a little while ago, the whole thing was like white supremacy. Let's label people neo-Nazis, blah, blah, blah. Now the trend is to call everybody a denier. So if you don't agree with the narrative, you're a denier. You're a COVID denier. You're a climate denier, or you're a hater. These are the tactics. This is what they do. This is always the same. And they've done it with everything. And they did it with Brexit. Everything. And that very much is, stop me when I've said too much, because I know I'm going on one now. But I mean, it was the same thing with Brexit. Anybody that voted Brexit was a xenophobe, a hater, a bigot, and everything like that. These are the tactics they use. And so that has the effect of then making people go, oh, yikes, I don't want to be thought bigot or a racist or a hater or a transphobe. And I don't want people to think that I hate Granny and things like that. I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I'm a good virtuous person. Yes, I'm going to go out. I will go and get my treatment. And yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's no such thing as biology. If George over there with the beard, who's a hod carrying builder, 5 days a week, wants to call himself Thelma on a weekend, that's fine by me. He can be a woman of a weekend and a hod carrying builder during the week. That's all fine. I don't see any contradiction in that. That's fine. And if I need to go and inject some experimental drug into my arm for a virus, which doesn't seem to be very much evidence for, I'll do it, just so people think highly of me and think I'm a good person. That's where we're at, and it's bonkers. It's totally bonkers. And again, I come back to the fact that I cannot believe so many people have fallen for it. So many people are doing it, and it's just insane. Let me stop there and you say something, Radic.
Yes, I had a few comments on the threads. I will go through them from the beginning.
Okay.
So first was friends from Ireland were commenting about uptake of treatment being a result of the fear, not really fear of the disease, fear of
Absolutely.
the restriction, not the fear of sickness.
Absolutely.
97% of Waterford, Ireland, fully double treated. Apparently sickest country on the island.
Yes. Yeah. Heard that.
So people are afraid more of the consequences of not taking the treatment
Well, that it's
rather than
just been announced today in Germany that they're going to forbid anybody going to the markets over Christmas. Anybody who's not vaccinated, forbidden from go. I just saw that on Paul Joseph Watson's website about an hour ago, and there's no option for people to take a PCR test or a lateral flow test and with a negative result. You can't even do that. You can't even take a test and produce a negative result and give it in. It won't be accepted. So that's just, I mean, that shows you how bonkers it. I mean, again, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. Everybody knows this. Everybody in the chat room knows this. And we all know it because it was admitted by Boris Johnson himself on national TV. It was on Sky TV. I saw it the other day. The treatment neither prevents infection or transmission. We know that. If we follow the narrative, all they're telling us is it makes it less likely for you to end up in hospital with serious illness. Now, you have to bear in mind that only a very small percentage of people anyway are ever going to end up in hospital with serious illness from this, because for the majority of people, it poses very little threat whatsoever. And to then insist that children have it, that for me, that is absolutely no. We cannot be giving this to children. At least adults kind of you think were intelligent enough and old enough to make a decision for themselves, but children are not. As grown up as they may think they are, they really aren't at all, and they're not. Good God, I am an adult, and it took me, my journey, my awakening, if you like, happened about 6 years ago. It happened around about 2014, which was when I came on social media for the first time. And I did not understand some of the stuff I was seeing on social media. I just didn't understand it. I was like, well, what are these people talking about? And when I challenged it, I got called a hater, or I got labeled this and that. And I just thought, well, I'm not one of that. And I just didn't understand where these people were coming from. They were throwing new words at me, new language I'd never heard before, what, like heteronormative. And I was just thinking, what are you talking about? And it was like, I realized pretty quickly that these people had invented new words because, well, they had to, because frankly, the arguments they were coming out with were not supported by ordinary language. They had to invent new words to describe what they were talking about, because their whole everything they were going on about was so bleeding crazy. You had to invent a new language to describe what they were talking about. And since 2014, through to now, 2021, I had to accept an awful lot of things which previously I did not want to accept. And I had to accept that our governments are our enemies, that they do things, you know, to their own people. I wrote down a little list of things here. It's by no means comprehensive, but this is worth taking on board. So Johnson and Johnson were pushing on people a drug called Risperdal, which I believe was giving people heart attacks. Merck, the company which is now producing a pill version of the treatment for people, they were definitely pushing a drug called Vioxx, which causes heart attacks. They knew that they were doing that, and they were found out. Most of these people have had to pay billions of pounds in compensation because they were caught doing it. So that's Merck. That's the people now that are pushing this new treatment in a pill form. They were done for pushing a drug called Vioxx, which they knew raised the percentage of people getting heart attacks by 40%. That's how high it was. Johnson and Johnson again, they paid out $2.5 billion in a settlement. I think it was for that Risperdal drug. GlaxoSmithKline, they had a drug called Avandia, which was a diabetes drug, which also caused heart attacks. They knew it caused heart attacks. They also produced an antidepressant called Paxil, which they knew, when given to young people, particularly teenagers, that it was being prescribed to an awful lot of time. And I remember reading about this years ago because I read a few books by a woman who wrote a book called Prozac Nation. It was a really good book at the time, I remember, but I was young and I sort of read it and I didn't really question a lot of it, but it had some interesting stuff in there. But the woman was basically on Prozac and she'd written a book about how the drug had affected her. Anyway, this antidepressant called Paxil, when it was given to teenagers, was not relieving the symptoms of depression. It was actually making them more depressed, and it resulted in a high incidence of teenagers taking their own lives. Now, this company, GlaxoSmithKline, then hired somebody else, some journalists and some other medical publishers and stuff like that, to write a story downplaying the effect of this drug so they could continue to fucking sell it. So they knew that this drug was having detrimental effect on the mental health of the very people it was meant to be helping. It was screwing them up, and loads of them, a high incidence of them, were killing themselves. And they paid people to quash that story so they could, exactly like what's happening with the treatment that we're seeing now. Anything that comes out which runs counter to the narrative, the official narrative, is quashed. Call it censorship, call it whatever you like. It's tyranny is what it is. There is no other word for it. Yeah, and then there's OxyContin, a drug which was manufactured by a company called Purdue in the United States. They had to pay out $8 billion in compensation for the terrible adverse side effects of that drug. And also, I mean, Pfizer, I think I put a post on my Facebook page the other week. They have to date, I think, paid out at least $4 billion in compensation for things. And as I said earlier, when I alluded to that, somebody said where they came from. The WION news company, Indian, I think somebody said in the chat that they were in an Indian company. The pressure that company is putting on different states and countries to use their drug and to put it out, and the tactics that they're using, you know, if the drug is late or whatever else, you know, if suddenly the pandemic was considered over tomorrow, but you'd ordered a truckload of thingies, even if they haven't arrived yet, even if they haven't, you know, even if they're late with the production of it, you still have to pay the money. But Pfizer will never be held accountable for anything. They have liability. They've been exempt from liability with regard to every aspect of this. You know, if Pfizer are found wanting, and they are charged and do have to pay compensation to anybody at any time, do you know who pays it? Not Pfizer, the government.
I watched that footage and it was quite disturbing. I can't verify this because this is external source, but I've watched that footage and certain things claimed in that video were disturbing. So in that regard, the contract with company producing the treatment, which you've mentioned, was
Mm.
protecting company from infringement of intellectual laws. So in that regard,
Yes.
that this company could infringe of others' intellectual laws, so steal the patents from others, and then the government of a country that signed up with them would have to defend them or cover an illegal cost. It was going on and on for good 20 minutes with really shocking claims, but I
Yeah.
can't verify this. But I know the video that you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the first time I've seen those kind of claims. That was the first time I'd seen anything as extensive as that. But I had seen similar claims before, so I'm pretty. I mean, I well, I can't say, can I? Really? I mean, all I can say is, watch the video for yourself. Do your own research. That's what people always say, and that's the right thing to do. Check these things out for yourself. That's what I do. I go to. There's a few people that I watch quite regularly, and I do go to some of these websites. Check out the FDA websites. Check out the NIH websites in America. Check these things out, because you need, information is key. Knowledge is power. That's what it is. It's the more you know, the better prepared you are for what's coming. And what's coming is fucking horrendous. If we don't get our act together, what's coming is horrendous. The economy has been destroyed. It is, and I said this a year ago. I could see it. As I say, I kind of, people like to use the expression woke up. Well, I kind of woke up, like I say, about 6 years ago. I knew something was amiss. Something was definitely not right. I was literally just coming up against things that were absurd. They didn't make any sense to me. And it just got worse and worse. The more I looked into things I didn't want to believe, it became clear to me that they were true. And I mean, things that are now documented and fully publicized and stuff, like things like MK Ultra, some of these things that you look at that were previously only existed in the realm of conspiracy. People were conspiracy nuts if they talked about these things. They existed. They happened. People did experiments on other people. The Nazis did experiments on other people. After the Second World War, those very same Nazis that did experiments went to work for the Americans. They flew them out of the country. They were supposedly at war with this country, but they flew these people out of the country and then employed them in their own labs. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. There were a couple of experiments that were done in the 70s. As I said, I was a student. I studied psychology, and I remember Milgram's experiment, where they got people to electrocute other people as a test of their conformity and their obedience to authority. Now, they weren't actually electrocuting people, but they thought that they were. They believed that when they pressed this buzzer, it was actually electrocuting someone else. And they did it. They were told that they ought to do it, and they did it. I mean, they actually electrocuted other people. Then you had what was her name? It will come to me in a minute. The lady Elliot, somebody Elliot, I think it was, back in the late 60s, early 70s, who did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment. And literally, with these kids, she managed to convince one half of the class who had blue eyes that they were superior to the brown-eyed kids one day. And then the same children the next day actually believed and went along with the idea that the next day the brown-eyed children were superior to the blue-eyed children, and they went along with it. And it just shows how easy it is to manipulate. Of course, these were children, and children are particularly impressionable. They probably, some of them thought it was a good game, but they went along with it nonetheless. And some of them got quite heated, you know, in their attitudes and their behaviour towards their classmates because their eye colour was wrong. It is so easy to do this sowing of division. It's so easy to you know, influence people and to influence their behaviour. I remember years ago I watched a movie by a guy named Curtis, somebody Curtis. It was called The Century of the Self. And I'll be honest with you, I was in my late teens or early 20s or something. I was somewhat intoxicated. And I sat down and watched this documentary about Sigmund Freud and how the works of Freud had been utilized by the American government and the ad agencies at that time to convince people that they ought to buy certain things. You know, basically it was the beginnings of mass manufacturing and commercialism and consumerism is the word I'm looking for, and convincing people that they needed to buy things that they didn't really need. And so they started using Freudian tactics, theories of the unconscious and stuff like that, getting into people's minds. These were in the adverts. Then you get the subliminal advertisements and things like that, where they put the little subliminal images in, all simply done to sell products which were valueless, that had no lifelong, you know, life to them. They were going to, you know, be useless in the next 2 years, and they'd have to, much like we are today. In fact, you can trace a kind of coherent, not coherent, what's the word I'm looking for, thread from then to now, with the kind of mass production that we have with everything and mass consumerism with phones, which people are addicted to. You know, there's been much written about that, but of course that's part of it as well. These devices, people are addicted to their devices, and they don't put them down. That, you know, they walk into other people because they're playing with their bloody device. They live on their device. That has had numerous effects on people. It's divided people. They become atomized because everything about their life is on their phone. They would sooner text you than have a conversation with you face to face. When you must have had this yourself, when you have your friends around your house, they'll sit there, they've come round to see you, and then they sit there texting someone who's not there. I just think, well, if you rather sit there texting, why don't you go round there? Do you know what I mean? It's madness. But it's this kind of, you know, this little dopamine hit that these people get every time they get a like on a post that they post, and it's so superficial, it's so shallow and utterly meaningless. But people have bought into it massively, and they've become addicted to it. And it's through this device, this little tiny device, that a whole massive amount of this agenda will play out, will be facilitated. You know, when we go towards the cashless society and the digital central bank digital currency, which I spoke about last time. Watch Love Island, morons. I agree with you. I'm sure they are, Michael. But yeah, when we go to the central bank digital currency, I see people every day in the supermarket paying for things with their phone. Just, yep, I'll get that, because it's convenient and it's cool. It's cool. They think it kind of buys them some sort of cachet that they've got the latest iPhone or the latest Samsung, you know, and they can do everything on their phone. Oh, look at that. And that's smart. Look how clever I am. It's like, no, you know, stop doing that, because the moment cash is gone, the moment that this COVID, the climate agenda plays out the way they want it to, i.e. they get us off of hydrocarbons and fossil fuels and get us into electric vehicles, which only drive where the state wants them to. Like I see a post the other day, it was a meme, a funny meme, but it was so accurate, it was ridiculous. You know, this electric vehicle will only work if it takes you to where the state wants you to go, i.e. work or somewhere else. You want to go beyond that, sorry, if the state doesn't give you permission, you won't be able to go beyond that. If the state doesn't give you permission, you won't be able to spend your money on something. You won't be able to spend above a certain amount. You won't be able to buy the product you want, and you won't be able to buy it where you want or from who you want. This is what is going to happen, and this is going to happen very, very soon, unless people, I hate to use the expression, but they need to wake up. They need to wake up, and we need to trash all of these things I spoke about earlier, all of these things that are dividing us, all of this racial nonsense, this critical race theory. It needs to go. It's rubbish. This LGBT transgender nonsense, it is bollocks. I'm sorry, but it is absolute bollocks. You know, there is biological sex. You can't argue against it. It exists. It's a reality. The climate change agenda, there's no evidence for it. There's none. And COVID, there's no evidence for that. It's not, you know, where is the pandemic? Where is it? It's not being reflected in excess mortality. In fact, the only excess mortality we have that is fast becoming apparent now over the last couple of months, really, more so than anything else. I'm sure a lot of your viewers watch UK Column, who are particularly good on this subject, because they constantly present the charts and they're showing you this excess mortality, and it has risen in the last few months. But it's not from COVID. It's from people who stayed home for the last 18 months and didn't get treated for things that they should have been treated for. They didn't get the necessary medication to help them. And other illnesses like cancer and heart problems went undiagnosed. And most of those deaths actually are occurring in the home. They're occurring in people's houses. They're not occurring in the hospitals. This is what's happening. The fallout from the governments around the world, from the collective response to this virus, which poses such a small threat to the majority of to a very small minority of people, and almost no threat whatsoever to the majority of people. The fallout from our collective government's response to it has been absolutely disastrous. It is the worst thing ever. I said this last time, I'll say it again. More than 500 million people around the world have lost their jobs, have had their livelihoods destroyed. 500 million. 150 million have gone into poverty and starvation. Millions of people in this country alone have missed vital appointments and treatments with the NHS. Millions of women, I think they're trying to compensate on this now. I know I've got my own one coming up very soon, my first one ever, actually, a breast screening. They've not done those. That millions of women have missed breast screenings and have in fact gone on to develop cancer because they weren't seen when they should have been seen. Children, young people are being given this treatment and they're developing this myocarditis and pericarditis. The list, of course, of adverse effects is just like so high. It's just ridiculous. The fallout from this thing has been absolutely just, it's been far, far worse than the virus could ever have been. And everyone knows that. Well, everyone in office knows that the people that are doing it know that. And so the only conclusion you can draw, and as I say, this is what's happened to me over the last 5 years, because I wouldn't have believed this pre 5 or 6 years ago. And I think there's still a lot of people out there right now are reluctant to believe it. But the only conclusion you can draw is that all of this is deliberate. The whole of it is deliberate. They are killing people. Actually going, I will say that. I'm going to say that. I don't care what happens to me because I've been arrested already. They can arrest me and lock me up and throw away the fucking key. I don't care anymore. You know, it's about standing up for the truth and for justice and for freedom. They're the only three things that I really care about, to be honest, right now. That's it. Our governments are killing us. That is what they are doing. They are killing people. They know they are killing people, and they are going to continue to do it. Depopulation is on the agenda. It's at the core of so much of this whole approach to everything. So many of the various different agents that are involved in this all have connections which go right back to 1930s Germany. They go right back to the eugenics movement and depopulation. So many of them, the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to name but two. George Soros, who's out there deliberately destabilizing society everywhere he goes. All these philanthropic billionaires, they're all doing the same thing. It's corrupt. It's corrupt from the top down. And that's something I've been thinking about very much over the last few days, just how we've allowed this to continue for so long, because the very idea that the majority of people could be ruled over by a minority of people at the top of this pyramid, the very idea that that's even been allowed to happen is astounding to me. And that we've lived for so long with this illusion that we live in a democratic society when we're actually being presided over all the time by a few extremely wealthy. Yes, we did get extremely lazy and complacent and apathetic. Alpha Omega. I can't pronounce that. But you're right. Absolutely, it's just astonishing to me that people have swallowed this. And all the time they've been laboring under this illusion that we live in a democracy, that we live, and this is why I hate using these partisan terms of left and right, that we live in a kind of where we have an option of voting for the Conservatives or Labour or the Democrats or the Republicans. They're all the same. That itself should be enough to make people sit up and question everything. The fact that Labour and the Conservatives in this country are both exactly on the same page, singing from the same page, the same song. And in fact, the only criticism the Labour Party have of the Conservatives is they didn't do what they're doing enough or quickly enough or they should have
Hard
done it
enough.
more.
They didn't lock
Yeah, we should have
down
had more restrictions.
sooner, longer, harder.
Exactly. Now, what
We
criticism, what opposition is that? It's not opposition at all, and it's the same thing in the States. It's no
I've
difference.
just
And sorry,
I've just read thing before we started live stream that Keir Starmer is self isolating for a fifth time, and author of the post
oh,
suggested
is
if
he
is he eating um, but toast for breakfast.
right? He's an idiot. I mean, he's another one, isn't he? He went out and took the knee for the Black Lives Matter. I mean, and we've seen this. You and I, we've been out on protests. We've seen this. If you go out and protest, you're not protesting against COVID. None of us are doing that. Some people don't believe it exists. I believe. I think it's there. I think it's there because enough people have said to me they've had it and they were really rough with it, and I've got no reason to disbelieve them. But all I can tell you is, and God, I mean, trust me now, I'll probably get struck down tomorrow. But I've been out on half a dozen protests. I've mixed with thousands of people, and I have had nothing. And I haven't worn a mask, and I've certainly not been jabbed. I just keep myself fit. Some of you have probably noticed I'm quite bruised, actually. I've even got bruises on my bust. It's because I do martial arts. So I was grappling on Monday night with half a dozen guys, and I am slightly battered. But aside from that, nothing. I keep myself in good health. I go down the gym. I eat sensibly. I try to get sunlight, despite my obvious pale complexion. Typical Anglo-Saxon. But yeah, I mean, and I'm fine. And I think most people would be if they would take that. What is two things I must mention, and I must not forget this. So please remind me to come back to this. Natural immunity. I must come back to natural immunity. But one of the things our government should be held responsible for, and of course they are now supposedly trying to do something about it via some sort of social credit type app, is they, over the last few decades, they have fed the population of this country, and it's happened all over Europe, it's happened all over the world, in the developed world, with fast foods that are full of fat, sugar, salt. That's been the diet of people for decades now in the developed world. And we have an epidemic. One thing we do have an epidemic of is obesity. Now, that is extremely dangerous. Then a little while ago, if you remember, a couple of years back, we had people going, oh, no, you can't criticize people for being obese. People who are obese are just as healthy as anybody else. Fat is beautiful. Well, it's not, is it? I mean, one of my friends is a nurse up at the hospital, my local hospital, and they said to me, in the COVID ward was made up of, and I quote this, overweight, obese people, the elderly, and black people. And the black people, the majority of them were overweight as well and diabetic. That's your cohort of people that are prone to this virus. Overweight, elderly, and diabetic. That's it. And that's, if you look after yourself, if you're below 60, probably even 70 years of age, and you're in reasonably good health and you have a good body weight, you are, this thing is not going to affect you. You're going to be impervious. Well, I won't say impervious or immune, but you're certainly very unlikely to get seriously ill. But do you know what is astonishing as well, Radek, is when you messaged me earlier and said, we're going to be a bit later than usual, I was like, oh, I haven't got the energy. And I have rattled on now for I don't know how long. And then, I hope people are finding this interesting. I really hope that they are. Natural immunity. Study after study after study. Seriously, there's a mountain of paperwork now, all attesting to the fact that natural immunity is far, far superior to anything given to you from the treatment. Anything. 99%, at least plus is what you've got with your natural.
Even original classical treatment, they were basically designed to stimulate the immune system. They weren't meant to be a drug that will prevent something. They were just a tool to train the immune system.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what we have now, of course, is a gene therapy, an experimental gene therapy, which let's not forget is still under emergency authorization. It hasn't been approved. There was a big hoo-ha recently about the fact that they'd approved a variation of the, I think it was the Pfizer one, called Comirnaty. But that doesn't seem to exist. This approved drug, this Comirnaty, nobody's been given Comirnaty. It's not out there at all. It's just been talked about, and they used that as a thing. They were to say that this drug has been approved, but actually nobody's received the Comirnaty drug. That, I think, that was just a thing to sort of like give this a bit more weight, a bit more authenticity. Like, yeah, it is okay. It is a regular drug. It's safe and all that lot. Natural immunity, let's stick with that for a minute. As I said, there's reams of paperwork that attest to the fact that natural immunity is far, far better. And there's lots of reasons for that. So for those people who don't know, I'm going to give a really, really quick breakdown as to why natural immunity is better. So your natural immune system recognizes the entire virus. This genetic thing that we're being given or being asked to take only recognizes the spike protein. So you have the whole virus with these spikes on top. Your immune system is being trained to, well, it's being, you're being to produce the spike protein in your own body, and then your immune system attacks it. That's supposedly how it works. This results in all sorts of problems because the spike protein then ends up in your body everywhere. They found huge concentrations of it in the liver, in your ovaries, and in men's testicles. They have found it in the sex organs and things like that. Everywhere, as you say, it doesn't stay in the shoulder. It travels all around the body, and they're finding large concentrations of it in all sorts of organs, and it's resulting in blood clots, and it's toxic. It's toxic. But as I say, the immune response is not responding to the entire virus. It's only responding to the spike. So when they then create, some people, it's also known as a leaky virus because of this. So when they create the variants, which the treatment has undoubtedly done, there were no variants until the treatment was produced. Your body is still only responding to the spike. Now, if the variant is slightly different, it's just going to bypass your immune system completely. It may be you'll still respond to the spike, but you absolutely, the virus itself, your immune system will take no notice of. Your natural immune system, if it's allowed to work, will respond to the entire virus. That's what it does. And this is the thing. You know, I've got a couple of friends who've become very religious. One of them is a lovely girl I marched with in a couple of the protests, called Grace or Ruby. I'm never sure if her name's Grace or Ruby, but she's absolutely lovely. She's really adorable, and she's a devout Christian. And I've been thinking along those lines a lot lately, because some of the things she's posted, you know, from the New Testament are really quite amazing statements. And wherever you think we came from, whether you think there's some divine creator out there, you know, the great clockwork maker or whatever it is, or you just think, like I tend to personally, the theory I subscribe to is that, you know, we're all products, we're all children of the stars, we're all the elements that make our bodies were fermented in the furnace, the center of a star, an exploding star. And that's a wonderful way of looking at things, you know, as well. And that's actually scientifically true, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing, and it's like well, it's truly wonderful. It is something that's beyond our comprehension, frankly. It's beyond my comprehension anyway. And the fact is, these people, the Faucis of this world, and the Neil Fergusons, and the Chris Whitties, and the Chris Valence, are they both called Chris? I'm not sure. Whitty and Valence, those two, the idiots. All these people, they think they're so clever, and they think, you know, I've heard people, somebody called Harari, who spoke at Davos recently, talking about the human DNA system, the human genome, as the book of life, as something which they can read, and they can reinterpret, or they can rewrite. They can do a better job of it than God himself or herself or whatever else, that they can do better than nature. And this is one thing that's clearly showing and illustrating that they can't. And their supreme arrogance and hubris of these people is just, again, is astonishing, that they actually think that they can improve upon the book of life. They cannot. And they need to avow themselves, or if that's the right word, or disabuse themselves, that's the word, of this notion, like yesterday, because where they're going is fucking dangerous, and they cannot improve on nature. And if there's the one thing that this whole thing has shown, that is it. Natural immunity is for life. Some people will say it's not for life. Some people will say it's only for years. A lot of people still say it's for life. I think the majority of people think it's for life.
This
If you
comment that I
get,
just have to share.
Mhm.
It's sorry, it's that one about Neil Ferguson,
Yes,
the
he is.
most incompetent professor in history. Reading tea leaves would give you better prediction. At least they'll be right sometimes. Well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, like
deluding.
a clock, like a clock, a stopped clock. It'll be right twice a day. Yeah, absolutely. You're so on the money there. That's absolutely true. These people are supremely arrogant and egocentric and egomaniacal. This is the trouble, and it's like, unfortunately, these are human qualities. I hate to admit it, but all too often you see it, and there's that expression, isn't there? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And with these people, it clearly has done that. The society, I mean, the free market and democracy and everything else like that are very laudable ideas. They're noble enterprises, and they would work if there were regulations in place to stop certain individuals becoming super powerful and super wealthy. That's what's happened, over the course of, I don't know, the last century or so, from the Rockefellers onwards. I mean, there's books that have been written about the and I could talk for hours about the Rockefellers, and I'm sure lots of people in our chat know a lot about them as well. If you don't, I will give you a little tip here. I mentioned a guy before called James Corbett. Has a thing called the Corbett Report, and if you go to his website, he's an incredible guy, really well informed, and he has got a documentary that he made on his page about the Rockefellers, and it's a total expose of and it's astonishing. It's really, if you've not seen it, please, anybody, the Corbett Report, check out James Corbett's expose of the Rockefellers. It's incredible, well worth a watch. Anyway, as I say, going back from the Rockefellers right the way through to this day, so many people have become ridiculously wealthy and in turn ridiculously powerful and influential, whilst the rest of us have been kept, on a moderate wage and basically in a cycle of kind of poverty where we just about scrape our ends, make ends meet, scrape a living, get by, pay the bills, and then, and it's like that from the cradle to the grave. It's like you get out of school, you work your ass off, then you retire and die, and that's it for the majority of people. That's got to change. The whole system has got to change. We cannot allow just a handful of people to monopolize and dominate the economy in the way that they're doing. These people, the Jack Dorsey, Twitter, it is a rigged game. Yeah, of course it is. The odds are stacked in their favor constantly, but that's how it works. The more money they get, they spend that money then securing their position for years to come, which again, like, it is a human trait. If you can ensure that your child's life is going to be a better life than the life you've had, most people would do that. Most people want to see their children grow up and have a better life than they've had. This is the same thing, but, by orders of magnitude, far more extreme. It's the same with the Rothschilds, absolutely. Bankers, and this is the people that are ruling the world now. This is the people that arguably have been ruling the world for at least the last century, that manipulated the wars, the world wars. As I said earlier, create a catastrophe. If you need an end, you require something to happen, and you want it to play out the way you want it to play out. Well, if it's not playing out easily, well, let's have a war. Let's create this, let's create that. And this is what happens time and time again. And of course, people just, this is again totally baffling to me. One of the players that's very much back on the scene today especially with regard to COVID passports, which are completely fucking unnecessary, absolutely unnecessary. There is no need for them. They achieve nothing. Nevertheless, Tony Blair, the man who sent us to war in Iraq, despite the fact that millions of people around the world said they did not want to go to war, the fact that there was no evidence for going to war, none whatsoever, they went to war. They went to war and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead because of that man. Yet that man still enjoys, wealth that most of us could only ever dream about. A seat at the table of other billionaire philanthropists around the world. He walks about in esteemed company constantly wherever he goes, and he's a murderer. He's a murderer. In the same way that Epstein was a paedophile, and quite possibly there are quite a few people out there as well. I won't go into details too much right now. I don't want to get you in trouble, but who also were connected with him, who we know were connected with him and were up to very shady things, and they are still getting away with it. This all needs to stop. The whole system, that much I am in complete agreement with the Black Lives Matter movement. The whole system is corrupt and it needs to end. It needs to stop. The power is with us. It's with the people. None of this can happen unless the people allow it to. Unfortunately, because these corrupt, twisted, fucking sociopathic psychos at the top of the pyramid of power have all the power and the money and the wealth to buy the media, influence the media, and work through their various different means of avenues, go down various different avenues of propaganda, and utilizing fear in the way that they have done in the last 18 months. Because they have all that at their disposal, they have kept most people, imprisoned by their own fear and bleating like sheep, and just going with the flow, just going along with it to get along with others, to be seen, as I said earlier. They don't want to be the odd one out. They don't want to be singled out and labeled a dissenter or something bad, like a bad person. This whole thing these days about being virtuous and being perceived to be a good person, somebody who does the right thing. Well, it's nonsense. Listen to your conscience. Listen to your. I know that most people watching us now. This is the sad thing. Most people who are watching this now are already listening to their conscience. What we need to do is we need to somehow get this out to other people. We need to, everyone who's watching this now, please share it. If you think it's worth sharing, share it. Get other people to listen to it. Take some of the things I've talked about with regards to, these big drug companies, natural immunity, the whole woke agenda and all these things. Talk about it with your friends. Make them listen. Point them in the direction of people who are infinitely better qualified to talk about this than myself, like James Corbett. Send them to those channels. Get them talking. Turn them on to this. Point out the glaring inconsistencies in the narrative, and don't get bored of it. Just keep on. Just keep doing it. I keep on. I honestly drive some of my friends crazy. I really do. Forever when I go out, I'm like, don't fucking use a credit card. Use cash. This is what they want. They want everybody on credit cards, using their credit cards, plastic money. That's what they want. Electric transactions that they can trace, that they can track, that they can control. Everything that's been done in the last few years has resulted in more surveillance, more observation, more profiling of the general public, of treating us all as if we are suspects, as if we're potentially, and this has been blatantly expressed by the American government recently, potential terrorist threats, domestic threats, people who actually had the audacity to go to local schools and stand outside and say, no, we don't want our children vaccinated, and to hand out paperwork, you know, listing the adverse effects and detailing what had happened to young people that had already had this vaccine with regards to myocarditis and stuff like that. They had the temerity to go and actually hand out this true information to people. How awful is that? And they got lambasted for it, and they're now being called domestic terrorists. People who just handed out truthful information. In America, they're doing exactly this again, where all of this nonsense originates from. They are. When I go on about the LGBT thing, you might think, oh, what is she on about? What is she talking about now? Why bring that into it? It's because what they're doing is dangerous. It's again, it's another way of messing with people's mindsets, and it's corrupting children. And if we're going to do anything at all, you know, to save ourselves here, even just to save our own face, we need to protect our children. They are the ones that are most at risk. They're the ones that are going to, you know, grow up in a world where they won't even know what freedom is. They will have no experience of freedom. Freedom will be a footnote in a history book. And they'll go, really? Did people actually do that? They actually, what? They went out after curfew? You know, they actually could travel further than 5 kilometers. They went to the other districts. They've seen beyond the immediate vicinity. You know, that will be like, wow, it'll be mind-blowing to these kids because they won't know what freedom is. The whole concept will be, you know, something that they've never heard of. And they won't have any idea about gender or anything else. They're the literature that's now proliferating in American colleges and schools, which is basically endorsing paedophilia. Again, back to paedophilia. They are endorsing this in literature in schools in America. I've seen the books. I've literally seen the books where it's like an elderly man, not an elderly man, but an elder man presents his penis to a young boy, and the young boy takes his penis in his mouth, and then he writes about it later and says, it was very nice, blah, blah, blah. Parents, rightly, are absolutely enraged about this, and they've gone to the school boards and they've gone and moaned at the headmasters and stuff like that. And those parents have now been deemed potential domestic terrorists. I mean, what? How is that? How? Because they want, and this is why, again, when I talked about my friend Grace and the kind of moral framework that she gets so much from the Bible from, this kind of, you know, things that we thought were boring and stuff like that. We do need to get back to that to some extent. And I'm not a Christian, I'm not religious at all, but there is a moral guidance in some of those things that is worth embracing. And we need to get back to that, because the way the world is going at the moment, the whole idea of ethics and morals and principles are just being, they're being flushed down the toilet. It's like with this whole new kind of thing that they're trying to get us to buy into, which is frankly disgusting on many levels, and corrupt and subversive and indeed perverse. And it can't be allowed to stand. We need to stand our ground. We need to get back to where we were. This new normal can go fuck itself, because it's bullshit, and I am not about to accept it, not for an instant. There's nothing normal about it. It's abnormal. It's perverse. It's anti everything. Yes, they have attacked Christian values for decades. She's absolutely right. And also what she's saying about Christianity. Yeah, Christianity has been under assault for the last decade, couple of decades. In France, there's not a week goes by without, and this brings me back to the immigration thing again. It was deliberate destruction of society. They brought these people into their country, At one point, Macron was on TV literally telling the white French women, I've seen this, to practice miscegenation. Miscegenation means to mix the races, to have a mixed race child. Macron was on TV telling the white French women that it was their duty to do that, that the future of France was bound up with Africa. That's what it was. Those two things are bound together. That's the way it must go. And therefore, we're going to flood our country with immigrants, like I said, at a speed and scale that had never been seen before, that nobody would ever have even the slightest chance to adjust to. And it's resulted in absolute calamity everywhere it's happened. Sweden is a mess. Belgium is completely gone. France is just collapsing. It's in a terrible state. And our own country, this country, I believe actually Poland and Hungary are two of the countries that I think there's someone else as well. I think there's a triumvirate of countries in Europe that have said no to this. And surprise, surprise, they've had no terrorist attacks. Those three countries have had no terrorist attacks. Or if they've had any, it's been very, very almost negligible. Whereas all the countries, sorry?
I had a few comments from Shukil, who I met during freedom rallies, like yourself. He
Okay.
got He's also an interesting guy, but he got more of the understanding of Asian culture, and he would disagree with you on some points.
No, I think that, as I say, I think 70, maybe 80% of them, Shaquille, are completely fine. I've got no problem with Islam. I don't dislike Islam. It's nothing to do with me anyway. It's nothing to do with me. I'm not religious. I don't understand religion particularly, but certainly by conservative estimates, 20 to 30% of them do have a problem with the West. And I think if Shaquille looks at that, he will see that what I'm saying is true. I've got a couple of books over there by Muslims that attest to the same thing. In any case, their cultural perceptions, their cultural outlook is very different. And by forcing the two together in such a way, it's causing a clash. That's what it's causing a conflict. And they knew it would do. It was designed to. I'm not buying into it. I am stating what's happening. This conflict between this, some people call it a clash of civilization, it was deliberate. It was absolutely deliberate, and it was to do what I'm talking about, as in response to the lady who just posted a moment ago about the attack on Christianity. It was to break down Christianity, to destroy Christianity. And that's what's happened in France. There's not a week goes by without 2 or 3 of their churches get set fire to or desecrated in some way. Absolutely divide and conquer. That's it. This is not an attack on Islam. I'm not attacking Islam at all. I'm just simply saying what has happened. I don't like Islam particularly. I'll be honest, Shaquille, sorry, but there's a lot of things about it I don't like, such as their Muslim attitudes, Islamic attitudes to women. I don't like that. I've read quite a bit of the Quran, and it's very clear in there that women are only valued at half of what a man is. That to me is wrong. 2 women to 1 man. A woman's testimony doesn't count. I mean, these are in the Quran. I'm not making this up. It's in there. A woman is only considered to be half the value of a man. I don't agree with that. And they despise homosexuals and gays and things like that. That's completely anathema to them. I don't agree with that either. For me, if you're living in a free society, live and let live. As long as people aren't hurting anybody else, that's fine. But cutting off hands for stealing, as they do in some of these more extreme countries where you do have like the Wahhabis and things like that. I know that there are different aspects to Islam in different countries, and some are more extreme than others. But we've seen what it's like in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's a whole other ball game anyway. I'm not going to go into that right now. All I'm saying is this was done deliberately to create conflict. That is what it has done. It has divided people, and the government's answer to that has been surveillance. More and more surveillance. We must spy on you. We must track your phones. We must get access to your internet history. It was deliberate. They are profiling us all the time on all these social media sites like Facebook and Twitter and what's the other ones? Instagram and what's the thing that a lot of people were on now? Snapchat and TikTok. Data harvesting constantly. Now they're data harvesting, and this is one of the things that I wanted to actually mention. I'm going to mention now. So I made a little note about this. So if you go to the Wellcome Trust, you will find a plan. I can't think of the right words for this, but part of their agenda is to build an artificial brain. It's called an in silico. I think it's an in silico brain. It's an artificial neural network, the perfect brain. What they then want to do, and this is why I've said about this on my Facebook page just recently to one of my friends who keeps posting pictures of her children. Stop posting pictures of your children, I said to her. This program is called the first 1,000 days. What they want to do is they want to monitor every child for the first 3 years of its life, from 3 months, I think it is. So once it's out of hospital, got past that stage, to the first 3 years. Now, the argument, like everything else, they're building back better, they're leveling up, is to make sure that no child, this is their own words, their actual words, no child gets left behind. So it's the idea is that all children will conform cognitively, their cognitive development will conform to this model brain that they are creating, an artificial brain. They call it the singularity. That's what they want to do. This is how they are enslaving us. They create a race of people where religion is destroyed. Now, the first religion to be destroyed is Christianity. After that, they will come for Islam. They will destroy that as well. But Christianity had to go first because the developed nations were first on the agenda. They have to be crushed because the developed are the ones that present the biggest obstacle to the globalist agenda, because they have a heritage and a history, and they have culture and traditions which unite them together. All of us do across Europe. We have these shared cultural, histories and stuff which unite us. So they need to be broken down because they're obstacles, they're impediments to the globalist agenda. This is what they want to do. So they destroy those. They use other religions to do it. They introduce these other religions. They elevate the needs of minorities. They elevate these other religions over our own. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how it works? It's deliberate. It's a deliberate plan. It's to break us down, to get us to relinquish our attachment to our roots, to hate ourselves for our history, for our part in colonialism, for our part in slavery, to disown all of that and disengage from it. And then they elevate these other things above it. It's all about breaking us down. So as I say, the first port of call for this is the developed nations. They get broken down first. Once they're broken down, because they're the largest kind of possible resistance to the agenda, then it's the other nations. In between time, they mix the races. So there is no white race any longer. The white race will be gone. There are literally people in American academia, professors, college lecturers, pundits, political figures. I've seen Joe Biden. I'm sure some people on here have seen. There's a famous clip of Joe Biden talking about how now America in the next decade will become majority foreign, and that the white American race will become a minority in its own country, and that's a good thing. That's what he said. That's a good thing. Now, I've seen lots of people talk about this. I have seen people talk about white people as if they are a scourge that needs to be expunged from the face of the earth. A lady called Barbara Specter, who's a Jewish woman from an NGO that is funding so much of the immigration into Europe, has told us that the white Europeans need to get used to the fact that they're not going to have things their way for very much longer. The WEF, the World Economic Forum, in their video where they talk about you will own nothing and you will be happy, in that same clip, at the end of that clip, they say that the Europeans are going to have to change their attitudes to immigration, and they're going to have to accept the fact that their culture is going to change. That's part of it. It's in there. It's a stated goal. This is a genocide on white people. They are destroying white people right now, and all that goes with that, our religious affiliations, our culture, our heritage, the whole lot of it is coming under complete attack right now. I know that sounds extreme, but if you do your research and you look, it's happening. This is all part of, and then that's it. It's evil. It's absolutely evil. It is twisted beyond words. It is sick. These people are sick, and they've rightly been called out for being sociopaths and psychopaths, and that's what they are, because nothing phases them. It doesn't matter the misery or the pain or indeed the death that they inflict upon other people. The Kalergi plan, yes, I've read that, well, some of it. It is satanic. It's so nefarious. It's almost incomprehensible to me. And this was something that, as I say, 5-6 years ago, I couldn't believe. I did not want to believe. I thought, no, governments wouldn't do this to their own people, but they are doing it. It's happening, and it's really picking up a pace now. In 18 months, let's not forget what they've done. They have had people wearing masks, covering their faces. Now that achieves so many things at once. I mean, it makes you ill. It's not good for you. It had no effect whatsoever on the virus. In fact, in this country, after they introduced mask wearing, the cases went through the roof just after they were mandated. It gives you bacterial lung infections if the things are covered in saliva and stuff. As they do, they get moist, they get worse and worse. It does make you question all of history. It genuinely does. I'm sorry, Radek, I was just answering somebody there. The masks categorically are shit. They are absolute shit. But one of the things that they do, again, 1984, George Orwell, is they are the first step towards a uniform. Everybody putting on a mask begins to look the same. We all look uniform. And it's like they've stripped us of our identity. Do you know, it's dehumanizing. That's what it is. You make people wear a mask, it's dehumanizing. You take away their identity, their personality. You can't see them smile, you can't see their expression, you can't understand what they're even saying half the time. And they serve no medical purpose whatsoever. And the science, supposedly, said that right up until 2020. That was it. That was the verdict. That was the general consensus amongst the scientific community. Masks don't bloody work. And then COVID happens, and suddenly, everybody's got to wear a mask. And that's what they did. So they had us doing that. Then they locked us up. They made us stay at home, kept us out of the sunlight, stopped us having exercise, stopped us communicating effectively, which also the masks did, stopped us communicating. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. It's just so terrible. It's so isolating and alienating, alienating. But
You've mentioned Yacinda. She mentioned during her speech to nation that they are going to be their only source of truth. This is like, pedophile predator saying to children after molesting that this will stay between us. This Literally, that's how it
Yeah,
sounds to me. Like, how can you say this to educated people
you
that
like Michael?
you're meant to serve to, not to manipulate them, that you're going to be their only source of truth.
Barbara Spectre. Yeah, sorry, I just seen that. Invasion. This
Well,
is great because I'm reading some of these comments, and these people are switched on. They're with us. They know what they certainly know what I'm talking about here. It's such a dodgy subject. Like with Shaquille, I don't mean any offence to Shaquille. I don't mean to offend him. Like you said, you've met him. He's a nice guy. I'm sure he is. Um, as I say, it's just a deliberate. It's an agenda, and it's an agenda designed to create conflict, to cause conflict and chaos, and to mess people's lives up, and that's just, it's just awful. It's incomprehensible to me. How do people do this? Sorry, I've just interrupted you. I've just talked over something there. Do you want to continue, Radek?
what you said is like, to me, it seems that problem is with collectivism, um, with the way we coexist as a society. There's globalization, centralization of power, centralization or erasing of the culture. That's where the problem lies. So
Yeah,
we've been chatting offline, not during this chat. What could provide a solution to this? And I, s- I strongly believe that individual building individuals is the key to this, is the key to the future, because all those models or those agendas, they're assuming that masses will comply, while I think that developed individuals will be able to function better, and that's the word I'm looking to engage into, where people are switched on and they got mind of their own, rather than
yeah.
hive mind, this whatever the system they want to install upon us, technocratic communism, modern fascism. I'd rather participate with human beings who are conscious, and everything is negotiable, rather than having this dystopian prison like hive minds. This is like hybrid of a prison and a hive mind system. So that's what I'm thinking, and that's the aim of me engaging in media, doing reporting. So let's say even this podcast, which we're starting, we need to find a form to this podcast, to this media channel. But what I tried to do from the beginning was to give people like yourself a platform to speak. We need to obviously be conscious of the censorship. Um, so most likely, at some stage, the channel might get the platform from YouTube or Facebook.
Well,
That's
I've
why I was.
tried to just use the words you told me to use. I tried to
It's
stick to.
it's not about words. It's if we will be going against the stream, and if we
Oh,
will be discussing subjects that are not politically correct. It's a matter of time. You can have thousands of videos which will not trigger the killer bots, yeah, and then you will have one
yeah,
video and they can just delete you on the spot.
I
So
know.
I'm, com-
And
I'm
unfortunately, just about everything I've talked about is anathema these days. I notice whenever I post anything on my Facebook page, if I post something about the treatment, there'll be a whole load of people, and it's normally the same people will go, "Yes, Mandy, that's great," blah blah blah, and they'll share it or comment. If I mention anything about LGBT or BLM, nobody wants to know. They don't want a bar of it, and they don't see how these things are part of the same agenda. They don't get that. They see them as completely separate. What they are switched on to is, you know, the treatment. They don't want that. Most of the people that are my friends on Facebook that look at my page, but they won't be drawn on these other arguments. And the fact we have to stop being browbeaten into submission about everything. You know, it's good to hate. It's actually good to hate. If you don't like something, say you don't like it. Be honest about it. The way we're living our lives at the moment, people are scared. They are self-censoring. You know, there's nobody who said they don't like anything. With your friend, your Muslim friend who commented, I like to think we can have a difference of opinion. We might even have a debate about it, a bit of an argument, but it's not going to come to anything. It's not going to come to blows. It's not going to get nasty. There's no need for that because we're rational, intelligent, educated people, and we can talk about things, whether we agree or don't agree. And with regards to the whole trans debate and the LGBT conversation, you should be able to say, I don't agree. You know, I don't agree. I don't subscribe to that. I'm sorry, I just don't. I think that's, frankly, I think that's nuts. And if you think it's nuts, you should be able to say so. That's what we're fighting for, is a free society and free speech and truth. You know, because otherwise truth is just getting lost in these ever more nebulous kind of definitions of things, because these redefinitions, like for example, the redefinition of the word pandemic, or the redefinition of natural immunity, and most recently the redefinition of gain of function. Fauci is now, because he's trying to defend himself with the gain of function stuff that created this virus, has now changed the definition of gain of function. Everything's just becoming so nebulous and vague that things are losing their meaning. Nothing means anything anymore. Frankly, the word racist doesn't mean anything anymore, because you call someone you know, whatever, you say anything. I can't even think of an example, but you're a racist. You're a racist because you don't like that, or you don't like this, or whatever. Or you use the word black to describe something that shouldn't be used. I mean, the things that apparently that the Scots in Scotland now, as we approach Halloween, don't want to use the word spooky. Halloween's like, when is it? Next week? I don't know what the date is right now. Yeah, so it's 28th. It's in a couple of days. You're not allowed to use the word spooky in Scotland. In Scotland, they want to, you know, these Halo and Amazon devices that listen to you, Alexa and things like that. Is it Alexa? I think it's Alexa, isn't it? These things are listening to you all the time. This Yusuf Humza, or Humza Yusuf, I'm not sure what his name is, who is a Muslim politician in Scotland, who hates white people. He hates them. I've watched a video of him just literally standing up in their, I don't know what you call it, their Scottish Parliament, and just saying, problem with this country, too many white people there, too many white people there, too many white people there. And you know, I don't blame him, because of course, if you can get your perspective across and your values across and your interests, if you can basically, you know, get your interests recognized and you know, prioritized, well, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? And that's the thing with all of these minorities, that, you know, as our society is being increasingly split up into minorities, all of these minorities, well, this is their day in the sun, isn't it? This is their moment. They want their interests prioritized. And that's what they've been promised. Your interests will be prioritized. You'll be at the front of the queue. We're going to make this, you know, our number one priority. This is what we're going to address first. And they love that. But they are willingly taking part in the dissolution of society. Society is being destroyed. It's being broken down. That's what they're doing. They're doing it deliberately. They get everybody on these things. So I'm going to, obviously it's 12:30. I know you want to wrap up. Some people have gone to bed already. So what are we going to do about it? Okay. So like I said before, I'm going to just reiterate a couple of things. Don't spend, you know, spend cash. Don't use your credit cards all the time. Try not to keep buying things off of Amazon. Try not to keep buying your foods and things out of the big supermarkets, the big, these big sort of multinational supermarkets like Asda, which is part of the Walmart chain, and things like that. Go to the market. If there's somebody selling decent fruit and veg on the market, buy it there. Support your local producers and things like that. If you've got a garden, grow your own food. That's what you're going to need, because these food shortages will happen. They're going to happen. They are at the moment. I've seen this with the American government. There's another guy actually I'd recommend people check out. He's called Ice Age Farmer. He has a YouTube channel. Very, very clever young man. Very erudite. His research is brilliant. And he's been highlighting how in America the government have been literally paying farmers to destroy crops. All of what's happening right now has been engineered. Everything. It's been totally engineered. It's not an accident. We went from Brexit and Trump to climate change, to Extinction Rebellion, to the virus. Then we had the Black Lives Matter protests. Now we're back on climate change again. And it's, we've got 10 years to live or whatever. You've got lunatics like Greta Thunberg, who's beyond words for her. And then you've got these draconian sort of martinets like Biden and Jacinda Ardern, who I can't even bear to look at anymore, or that other twat in Canada, who are all authoritarian despots who will, want to bring you all under their boot heels and keep you there forever. That's what they want to do. They're all for the state. They're all for state control and global power. We have to resist that. So you've got to support the little man, buy your fruit and your things that you need. Exactly. Boycott Amazon. Boycott Amazon. Jeff Bezos. I mean, Amazon are now involved with the military, for Christ's sake. They've got they're involved in a huge profiling thing which is going on. Again, demonizing the public, making the public the potential terrorist threat, the domestic threat. All these things are all about security now. Public Health England are now, I forget what they've changed their name to. They're now called something security. I'm a bit tired now as well, so I can't remember. I'm not quite as on the ball as I was an hour ago. But everything's changing its name and it's being rebranded and repackaged as something else. And all of these new repackaging kind of models have all got the word security in there. Everything's about security all of a sudden, as if everybody on the street is a potential threat to security and they must be regarded as such. And this is why I say this division, amongst sex and gender and race and all of those things, is artificial, is bullshit. It's to get us divided because they see everybody as a threat. It doesn't matter who you are. So if you're divided, you're against the majority of people on grounds of sex and gender because you feel like you're a minority and they're the enemy, well, you're an idiot. Because actually, if you play into that game, then you are enabling this to go forward. If you're the other way around, if you're a black person, you're thinking, oh, the white man, the white countries, all this, they're all bad. Again, you're an idiot because you're enabling this to happen. This is what they want. They want us at each other's throats. They want us divided, and they will pick us off one at a time. This is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It is enslavement. I mean, I used that word a year ago in a couple of posts that I wrote, and some of my friends thought I'd lost my mind when I started talking about the end of Western civilization. But this is what is happening. This is why everything's zero COVID, zero carbon emissions, zero tolerance. It's everything zero because everything has to go to zero in order to rebuild, which is what they want to do, to create this new world order where everything is under constant surveillance, constantly monitored, constantly tracked, and nothing can happen without the permission of these people at the top of the pyramid who are doing all of this. Frankly, I think it's very simple. I think they're doing it because we, as far as they're concerned, in the last few decades, as we've got more and more educated, and certainly since the internet has come along, we've got too big for our boots. We have started to become wise to what our overlords are doing, to how they live their lives, to the to the backhanders, the shady deals, to the cronyism, and to their weird sexual predilections and things like that. We have become aware of these things and we've called them out. One here, one there, another one there, and it's like, they're sitting there and they're watching it. We can't allow this to go on. This has got to be stopped. It's got to be stopped now. And this is what it's all about, to trap us forever. And if they do it, if they get this thing into our arms, I don't know what it's going to do to us. I know it's killing people. I know it's making people ill, but I suspect it is going to modify people's DNA. These people, like that Harare fella who was speaking at Davos, do honestly believe that they can change our DNA. And that is what they're on. Yeah, reset. They want to reset us. Like I said earlier, all these people who are going on about the colonialism and white imperialism and all of that sort of thing, this is what this is going to be colonializing. They're going to colonize your body. That's where they're going. That's what the 1,000-day plan is, that the Wellcome Trust have got in the wings. It is waiting in the wings. They are going to track everything you do. This is why they want you to wear these wearable Fitbits, and they want you to put your Alexa thing in your home and everything like that. They're listening to you. They're observing you. With your Fitbits and these wearables, they are literally monitoring your physiological responses to things. When you post pictures of your children on Facebook, they're watching them grow. When you post videos, they're seeing how your children, you're literally putting your children there for them to observe and to watch and to monitor and to take, things from, to build this kind of, this, like I say, this kind of the singularity, the in silica, I think it's called, this brain that they're working on. They're doing it by harvesting our data all the time, monitoring every single thing that we do, and we're giving them that information. I forget what the Facebook was actually called. It was called LifeLog or something like that, but it has its roots in the CIA. It's connected with the CIA and DARPA, which is the American military. I forget what that stands for, but it's the American military basically, and it's all connected, and it's like monitoring us all the time. We're under surveillance, and this is where this is all going to go. And this is what these variables are doing. As I say, they're monitoring your things because ultimately they want to get in here. They want to observe your thoughts, and once they observe your thoughts, they want to control your thoughts. And in the end, as I say, this 1,000-day program with the children, making sure nobody gets left behind, just the same as they do with the rainbow sticker. They put it on everything. And I said before last time, they put the rainbow thing on and they elevate the trans agenda and the BLM neo-Marxist agenda. And it's all about breaking down social cohesion and destroying things like the nuclear family. Destroy those things, that they need to go because they're impediments. This is what they're doing. They destroy those things. They monitor everything you're doing. They create the new world. And the new world is basically, we are all mindless drones. That's where we will end up, mindless drones. And that will be the future for our children, mindless drones. So I am going to go on. I don't know where I've got this second wind from, so I'm going to stop now. As I said, we can talk again. I hope people have enjoyed this, and I'm certainly happy to do this again if the people would like to hear more.
I
Don't.
just on listening devices there was a joke. I'm not sure. I just googled it. It seems to be by a guy named Rich Rogers, but I'm not sure who was the original author. And I will just read it to you. You will like it. My wife asked me why I was speaking so softly at home. I said I was afraid that Mark Zuckerberg is listening. She laughed. I laughed. Siri laughed. Alexa laughed.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's it. And as I say, you know, the battle is for our bodies. This is ultimately, you know, where I've been going over this whole last couple of hours. That's where it is. All of the other stuff is just, it's nonsense. It's a distraction. It's bullshit. All of it, because all of it's about getting inside you. And as I say, I think this treatment, ultimately, I think they're trying to monkey around with our DNA. They're trying to change us genetically. I know for a fact, I've read the Welcome thing about the 1,000 days. I've actually read that, and there's a really good woman who's written amazing stuff on it, called Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb, I mentioned her before. She's incredible. She's on Twitter, and she has her own website called Unlimited Hangout. She's as good as James Corbett. She really is. Wonderful stuff. It's very, very in depth though. So if you know, if you go to her, be prepared for a thoroughly deep read. And that might put some people off, because she's, as I say, she's very thorough. But yes, this is where it's going. This is the future. They are going to change us. I mean, we've all seen the clips of Klaus Schwab talking about how this is going to change humanity. This is transhumanism. This is what, you know, it is not the world that will change. It is people that will be changed. This man is a lunatic. He's a fucking lunatic. An A grade, you know, certifiable psychopath. That's what he is. I wish he would spontaneously combust. That's what I wish would happen to him and all of the others. I'm not going to say I wish somebody would go and do anything, because that, you know, that's terrible and will probably be banned forever. But I just wish these people would just collapse and die in something of their own making, because they're evil, twisted, fucked up individuals. I don't know where they come from. I don't know how they came into being. There's something wrong with them. There is something very, very deeply, troublingly, disturbingly wrong with them. However, they have money and they have wealth and they have influence and power, and they are a threat and a danger to us because of those things. And so we, as I say, and somebody just echoing what somebody else said earlier, we need to ignore all this other stuff, all these narratives about minorities and all the differences and division between us. We need to ignore all of that. We can, you know, we can sort those things out another day. The most important thing facing us all right now, and it is imminent, it is a clear and present danger, is what is going on with COVID, with vaccine passports. We mustn't allow vaccine passports to happen. We absolutely mustn't. There's no reason for them. There's no justification for them other than monitoring you and having your entire life on a digital platform that can be read everywhere you go. I saw a video the other day of China, that you know, the blueprint for all of this with their social credit system, where the cops are walking around with these helmets on, with some sort of camera-like equipment on the side that reads your temperature from 30 feet away, something like that. So they can tell if you've supposedly got COVID just by looking at you. They're doing that. It reads your social credit score. It reads your QR code. You know, if you've got a green pass or not. They can tell just in this thing that's attached to their helmet. It's a police state. We don't want to live in a police state. That's not what any of us signed up for. We are born with certain inalienable rights. They are inalienable. No one can transgress those rights. No one can take them away from us. No one. Absolutely no one. They haven't got the right. They can't do it. And we need to remember that and just stand by it. And we need to, I was thinking, I said earlier, I was thinking about Jesus. I was thinking about Christianity. We need to find that little bit of Jesus, believe it or not. That man stood up to the Roman Empire. And that was what I was thinking about the other night when I was just dozing off to sleep. It was funny. I don't know why. I think I must have read something somewhere. But one man stood up against the Roman Empire and he was crucified for it. That's what happened. He was crucified, but he would not give up his truth. He just wouldn't. Now, whether you believe in what he said or don't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually even matter if he existed or not. The story's there. We all know the story and we all know who he is. He stood up. Well, he did exist. I mean, I think that's pretty documented. Put on the armor of God. Yeah, bloody right. He stood up to the Roman Empire and he died for it, but they couldn't break him. And I swear to God, they won't break me. They will never break me. It doesn't matter what they do. I will not be broken. I would rather fucking die. I will not be broken by these bastards. That is what they are. And I hope that everyone who's tuned in tonight and is watching us feels exactly the same way. And I hope that they will consider it their moral duty and obligation to, if not share this video, to spread the word, to go to some of the things that I've mentioned tonight and to spread them to other people, to spend cash, to go to, you know, independent produce growers of food and exactly, just go to these people. Don't play into the game to the hands of these oligarchs and monopolists. Don't play into them, because the more you give them, the more powerful they get and the more corrupt they become, and the less latitude we have to express our freedom and to reclaim our freedom and to reclaim our lives. And that's what we have to do right now. We are on the very edge of this now. I can't believe I'm talking about this. I can't believe it's happened. I literally can't believe it. But we are at an end point in human history. And if we don't stand up to this, if we don't fight, if we don't all adopt the same attitude that I'm expounding right now, as of I'd rather fucking die than give in to this. We all need to think like that. I know it's extreme. I know it sounds dramatic, but we all need to think like that. And we all need to have each other's backs. I am free too. And that's it. And that's what it's about. It's about freedom, truth, and justice. And they are the only three things that matter. You know, and that's it. That's what has to unite us. And we have to fight, and we can sort all the other crap out afterwards. But we've got to stop these people, because if we don't, if the vaccine passport comes in and we allow ourselves to be reduced as human beings, to be reduced to a fucking digital QR code, we're doomed. We are about so much more than that. So much more than that. Every man, woman, and child on this planet is a universe to themselves. And they were born of the universe. They were born of something so spectacular and so magisterial and incomprehensible and magic and beautiful. We cannot allow twisted fucks with no imagination and no concept of what I'm even talking about right now to reduce us to a fucking digital QR code. It cannot happen. We cannot let that happen. We have to remain free, and we have to die, you know, if needs be, in our fight to remain free. That's what we have to do. And we've all got to be on board with this, because if we don't, that's it. That's it. I am right. Okay. I've said enough. Thank you, Radek, for letting me speak. Thank you for listening. I hope I get to speak to you again. Radek, I'm just going to leave it to you for your closing words. It's your this is your platform, and it was you who gave me the opportunity to speak. So you close us down now. You finish us off.
Yes, thank you for coming on this live stream. And for people who watched us, I'm looking to hear your feedback. Um, like I said, I want to give voice to independent opinions. We're not here to censor or to mind frame. So I would be in the opinion of the harshest discussion is better than um, systematic lie. So even complete disagreement can make a better discussion than what we're facing now. This crazy censorship. It's not benefiting us as human beings. So the whole concept for this podcast will be to meet interesting people, to voice opinion, to discuss alternative points of view or mainstream points of view, and that's my goal in this form. So I'm looking to hear about people's feedback,
Sorry.
and yes, we'll be looking to do more of those interviews. So if you've got specific subject that you want us to cover or guests that you want us to invite, then please drop me a line. And please, first of all, I will repeat myself, but on Facebook, please go to my secondary profile. I'm gonna link it again on this chat because on my main profile, I'm just banned. I've been banned so many times that every time every time I every time I get a new strike, I will get banned for 30 days minimum. I'm putting link to my new profile in chat, so please send me friend requests or follow the profile. I will be migrating there. Thing is with Facebook, it's all about shares. So the content gets spreads when people share it. So I've been operating mostly from Facebook, and I didn't really utilize YouTube, but YouTube is trigger happy. So, like I said, you don't know the time and place where you can be shut off the platform, but it doesn't matter. I'm working on a website. I'm researching now for adequate platform. But as for now, we use tools that we've got. So please use the second profile. Just follow and befriend me on the other uh, Facebook profile so we can stay in touch. Big surprise that was from a friend of mine who sent me link from World Economical Forum. One of members of World Economical Forum is the guy who invented, guess what? Telegram app. So we are being herded in that direction as a safe platform. We're talking there in echo chambers because if you look at the way the Telegram is designed, it is designed to not be shareable. It's just like one long chat. That's how I see it. It's difficult to read because you got long timeline uh, where you can't. I'm struggling to keep up. At least this is my impression of it, and it seems that we are being channeled there as a safe place, but then we're talking in echo chamber because it's not shareable. So look, as much as bad the Facebook is or YouTube, then they are working on this viral um, pattern. So if content is interesting enough, it will get shared, and it will get shared outside of this echo chamber, outside of our interest bubble, I would say. And that's why I'm not giving up on those channels because end of the day, I see this like as a karmic justice to use the weapon of an enemy against themselves. So we're using technology that they're using to suppress humanity. So we're using very same technology to fight back and to defend ourselves. and we're using this to expose our enemies. So that's what I want to leave you with. So we're looking for feedback, ideas for this form of podcast. So I want to interview interesting people and discuss problematic subjects on this
Like my
channel.
language. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the F words. There was a couple of people commented on that. It's terrible. I was just passionate.
Yes, we're passionate, but we will be working on this. So it's a good feedback to have.
Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in. So again, please follow up the second Facebook profile. And on Saturday, there is a rally against vaccine passports in
Yeah.
London. If I manage, I want to live stream that. So hopefully, I will see some of you in London. And yes, I'm restructuring things that I'm doing with media and journalism. So I will need some help from people watching. So to engage more with you. So let's stay in touch. Let's discuss ideas and let's fight back because what is happening is not acceptable. They're clearly going out for children. The whole thing didn't happen overnight. So this agendas at play, this direction. It isn't that just the scamdemic itself was planned for a long time. The whole direction of humanity was wrong for a long period of time, and many people now wake up to this, and many more will wake up as things gets worse. So that's what we need to focus on, and I think by working with individuals, empowering individuals is the key because each individual can break this collectivism, this madness. So that's my thoughts on it. So again, thank you for tuning in, and good night.